This is Donald Parham. You're listening to Chargers Unleashed, part of the LAFB Network. Stay jiggy.
Hey, this is Chris from the second, Chargers outside linebacker, and make sure you check out Chargers Unleashed.
Shout out to Chargers Unleashed, Sebastian Joseph, they know the vibes, we outside.
You checking in with Mike Williams from the LA Chargers, and you're tuning in to Chargers Unleashed.
You're listening to the Chargers Unleashed podcast with your host, Dan Wolkenstein and Jake Hefner.
Welcome to Chargers Unleashed. Dan Wolkenstein, Ryan Dyrud here filling in for Jake Hefner, who has gone on vacation for the holidays with his family. Again, welcome to Chargers Unleashed. Your Chargers are playoff bound. We can't wait to talk about all of this with you. Before we go any further, this episode is brought to you by BetOnline, Charger Bolt Family, Rock Solid Sports Memorabilia, and Athletic Greens, which we'll talk about here in a bit. If you have not listened to us before, welcome. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, Spotify, Twitter, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, everywhere. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you find us. Leave a review. Say hello, if you will. Ryan Dyrud.
My man.
Welcome
What's
to
up?
Chargers Unleashed. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas to you and yours. How are you?
Great, man. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Back in LA after spending about 10 days out in frigid Colorado in the snow. But it was good to be with family, and Mia got to play in the snow and have a lot of fun with Santa and grandparents and stuff. But happy to be back. Happy to be talking our playoff bound Chargers. We can finally say again, expectations were high this year. It's been a roller coaster, but as of now, they've met those expectations being there in the playoffs. So excited to get in with you. Thanks for having me fill in for your better half, Jake. Hopefully he's having a good
course.
time.
And my better half, my more pessimistic half, he picked a great time to be MIA when the Chargers clinch a playoff spot. Things are roses, flowers going to Brandon Staley, and the pessimist half of us is now gone. Interesting.
Yeah. I guess I shouldn't say better half. He's the worst half, considering he's the glass half empty guy.
He's the more pessimistic half for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
But Chargers beat the Colts 20-3, clinch a playoff spot, 17-point victory. Chargers most likely are going to end up being either the 5 or the 6 seed. I think the 7th seed is kind of out of reach unless a crazy amount of things happen. Before we go any further, let's talk about our friends over at Athletic Greens. Everyone knows I got my little shtick, 3 ice cubes. I put in the shaker, an ounce of the Athletic Greens or AG1. If you're looking to improve your gut health, vitamins, minerals, part of your everyday routine, Jake and I believe, Ryan, you have as well, have been using this Liquid Death. I keep saying Liquid Death, using Athletic Greens now for a couple months. And honestly, when I don't take it, I don't really feel that great. Even with all the Christmas cookies that I'm eating, it's really easy to use. It takes the place of a bunch of all the vitamins and minerals that I've had to then use like 17 different pills for. With Athletic Greens and AG1, literally just take 1 scoop, 3 ice cubes, a little bit of water, shake it up, start my day off pretty good. If you would like to, either I'm giving you free vitamins and minerals travel pack, go to athleticgreens.com/Chargers Unleashed and go ahead and get yours and start your health routine now. Jake usually talks about how terrible his health is, especially when it comes to like fast food and things. And so this is like the one way he's able to kind of recoup some of that. Ryan, are you normally like the healthy guy, or like are you the 80-20 where like you're normally eating fast food junk and then you feel great the one day a week you eat a salad?
I'm a horribly unhealthy guy. Absolutely. So you can't see like the lower half of me, but I've definitely put on the LBs. It's not just because of Christmas season. Definitely unhealthy. But here's like not about me, but I was talking to my dad, Dan, about my dad is, he's in his 50s. He's looking for, something to get better gut health. He had a big scare with COVID 2 years ago where he like almost died. He was in the IR for almost 4 weeks. And so he's been looking at ways to really improve his health. And I wasn't even talking about AG1. I was just back home from Christmas. He's like, yeah, I've been looking at these different supplements, but they're like $150 a month for the subscription. They're not even that good. They don't even include everything. And I was like, well, shoot, we got this new sponsor, Athletic Greens. It literally checks all those boxes. It's half that price. It's going to make you feel great. So my dad started doing it now, and he's, a few days in and loves it and says it's like the best supplement he's taken. And he's tried a lot. I don't know if people remember like Juice Plus back in the day. Him and my mom were big Juice Plus, and nothing against Juice Plus, but this is definitely, I think, a better product than that, and you can get it for a lot cheaper. So your link's the place to get it. I'll let you drop that again, and we can get into this.
athleticgreens.com/Chargers Unleashed. Go improve your health, make your life easier in the morning, and feel better on the daily. All right, so Ryan, this has been a tumultuous 2022 season so far. I feel like it has been ridiculous roller coaster, full of all kinds of adversity. And the Chargers go out these last 3 weeks. Defense decides to flip whatever switch using AC/DC and just going crazy, beating the Dolphins, beating the Titans, and now beating the, let's call a spade, not very good Colts team. But same Colts team beat the Chiefs, beat the Raiders, beat the Broncos, beat the Jaguars. 1 point losers to both, I believe it was the Eagles and the Niners. So like any given Sunday, right? But Chargers did their job and clinched a victory, albeit with 2 weeks to spare, which is like a weird feeling.
Yeah.
They're in the playoffs. Like, for how much crap has happened this entire season, I don't think anyone, including folks in that building, thought that they would be clinching a playoff spot at week 16.
Well, I think before we even get into it, Dan, the actual play of this team and what they've overcome, for years, there's always been this cloud of the Chargers of this cursed franchise. And they couldn't get out of their own way. They couldn't win the close games. They had bad in-game management. Obviously the injuries, which obviously that was still a big case this year, but all these little things. And what was funny is going into, I saw multiple people tweet it. You were definitely one of them. Going into this week, there were 4 things that had to happen for the Chargers to make the playoffs. Obviously, winning was one of them. But in years past, those never would have happened because nothing ever went. I mean, just look at last year. Chargers needed a tie in the last week to make it. They make it to overtime and then lose that game in overtime. And so the fact that all 4 things, the 3 teams that need to lose, and the Chargers obviously win, it's almost like this season, you can kind of feel something special about it, what they've overcome, who's on this team, the love for this team, the buy-in these players have with this coaching staff, the overcoming of the injuries, all this stuff. And then with that, what happened this past weekend on Christmas, it just feels like something's brewing that's actually special, Dan. That's obviously this is a special year, but it's something building for the future that I think is really exciting.
Yeah, many gifts were under the Christmas tree. Lots of them were blue and gold. And I think it was weird. It was weird to sit there on Christmas and watch all of this stuff happen that doesn't happen to Chargers fans or the Chargers normally. And you're just checking boxes one by one. And it's a testament to the team's resolve. It's a testament to the players, the coaching staff, obviously. Brandon Staley, I think, deserves a ton of credit for kind of holding everyone on the rope, kind of keeping everyone together, because this season could have gone very different. And in all, I mean, for the most part, should have gone different, considering how many things were kind of going as headwinds against them. So they go up against the Colts, kind of a slow start from the offense anyways, although defense was flying. I mean, you saw, I think you and our resident, founder of LAFB, Ryan Dyrud, he was one of the first people that I know that was hyped when the Chargers were looking at Brandon Staley or needed a new coach, and he had recommended Brandon Staley. So you would know this more than I would, as you cover the Rams as well. One of the things that I noticed about his time with the Rams as a defensive coordinator was, yes, they had Jalen Ramsey. Yes, they had Aaron Donald. Obviously, they're superstar players. But if you go back and look at, the stat sheets and just, the overall numbers of that defense, it wasn't like those 2 guys were filling up stat sheets and, getting 15 sacks and getting 10 plus interceptions. It was a team thing. And, everyone ate, it felt like. You saw John Johnson go out and do his thing. You saw Sebastian, just the bunch of guys that all filled up the stat sheets. By the end of the season, there was I forget what it was. There was 6 or 7 guys each having 6+ sacks, a whole bunch of interceptions, tackle for loss. Then fast forward to this last game. Mike Davis, interception. You saw Asante Samuel Jr. interception. Obviously, Derwin James does his thing, gets his pick. And then you're seeing sacks from Chris Rumph, Morgan Fox, Kyle Van Noy, Drew Tranquil, Kenneth Murray, Khalil Mack. Everyone is kind of doing this as a team. And I think that's a staple of Brandon Staley's defense. And when you see this defense do well, It's when they are doing well collectively and not just needing their closers to close, which is nice to have them. But seeing the team collectively all pitch in for this, I think was probably the most bittersweet thing for me, was seeing a Kenneth Murray get hyped, to get emotional as they're winning, was seeing Morgan Fox and Kyle Van Noy and seeing Michael Davis. We all know kind of his story. You've watched Brandon Staley for years. Am I off on that? Is that something you saw too?
No, you're not off at all. 100%. I mean, that's the biggest thing. We've talked about it a lot. I know I've talked with you about this defense is, it requires every single person doing your job. And yes, you can rely on some star power at certain positions. And the way they build the defense out is you want a star at each level. So you have that, which they built this Chargers team with that, with, Bosa, and they obviously added Mack. You got Derwin on the back end. You draft Asante Samuel. You draft, guys like Kenneth Murray, who obviously that was pre-Brandon Staley, but guys in the middle that can be athletic. And so they built it on that. But then the big thing, Dan, that I think, because everyone always said, and rightfully so, is like, all right, here's this defensive guru, but like, why are they so bad? Why are they struggling? Yes, there's been injuries, but last year, last in the league against the run. This year, the first 10 weeks or so, almost last against the run, very bad in points allowed. What was it, 27 or so? And the biggest thing, and I don't think enough people really talk about this, and I know it seems like so logical, but I just don't think we saw it happen until now, this past 3-4 week stretch, is two things. One, players have to fully buy in. And there's a difference between saying yeah, we love Brandon. We trust his system, yada, yada, knowing it. There's a difference between that and like 100% selling out and buying him. And then two is that your defensive leaders, whether it be your star players or just vocal leaders, are really stepping up in a leadership role and holding people accountable. And I think in last year and even weeks past, they were relying so much on a Derwin James to make the play, relying on the guy next to them to make the play, and not saying like, if I just do my job and do it great and buy in, I trust this system to be great. And now we've seen, Dan, these last 3 weeks, obviously no Joey Bosa. We've seen Derwin James for one quarter because he got suspended last week. And this defense is the best defense in football over this last stretch, allowing only 18 points a game. They've been dominant, multiple sacks every single game. We've seen Kyle Van Noy break out completely. And so I think, and I've said this many times, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back here, but if you look at the scheme since Staley's been here, the scheme has been good. The players are in positions to make plays. Unfortunately, they just haven't made the plays. The actual production and the output has not revealed what the actual projection was.
Yes.
Execution issue. And we've seen these last 3 weeks, guys are executing, and it's a beautiful thing.
And it's interesting because, we'll get into kind of the offense versus the defense and the offensive struggles that we've seen. And trust me, it's not all roses here. We know there are things that need to improve. But when I look at kind of the offense versus the defense, on the offensive side, like it seems like a scheme issue. It seems like that's the major issue. It's not a talent thing, really. And I don't really think it's a execution thing, really, although sometimes it is. Sometimes it's boneheaded penalties and stuff. On defense, they're there. Like the players are put in the position to succeed, and then they don't. Like it. Mm-hmm. And I think you heard Drew Tranquil say after the Raiders game, there was kind of a come to Jesus moment, if you will, where basically that was where the team kind of got together and was like, look, it's on us. And there was like an accountability discussion on those players. And you're seeing kind of that pay dividends now. And for guys like Jazeer Taylor and Dean Leonard on special teams and Mike Davis and Kenneth Murray, talked about it before, Drew Tranquil's been balling out as of late. Khalil Mack, unsung hero. I know he doesn't get the stats, but my God, he has been so far the MVP of that defense. It's not even funny. But to see them literally be the number one defense the last 3 weeks, yards wise, production, like points wise, is like chef's kiss. And a lot of folks were on whether it's fire Staley's on the hot seat, Renaldo Hill, Telesco, whatever. Like there's a lot of people that were throwing shade without kind of seeing the full context. Ryan, the Chargers are now 9-6. They have clinched a playoff spot, which everyone talked about until he makes the playoffs, fire Telesco, fire Staley. Like, that's a huge check, not just for a one Brandon Staley, but also for Justin Herbert. Now, quickly getting into the game, it was interesting. Offense kind of struggled a bit until that second half, but the defense was flying around. I think I mentioned we saw the interception by Michael Davis. We saw one by Asante Samuel Jr. You saw one by Derwin James. A whole bunch of sacks. I think they held them to a total of like 173 total net yards, which is insanity. And for a fan base that has had to watch their quarterback have to play Superman every single week for them to have a chance to win, it's nice to be able to kind of sit back and just let the defense win it for you. And I wouldn't even say that Justin Herbert struggled. Even the tipped interception, of course it's a tipped interception. That would happen. Now, should it have been thrown? I don't know. But that's playoff football.
Yep.
It's hard to go, to score 38-35 every week. And the games that we've seen the Chargers win these last 3 weeks, that's how the playoffs go. And so I trust this offense. I trust Justin Herbert, Keenan Allen, and company to perform when they need to most. The defense has been the question mark. So if the defense is good, okay. And now you got, possibly Joey Bosa coming back, possibly Rashawn Slater coming back. I know Derwin James was, ejected because of the hit. Now concussion protocol. I think he's fine considering he was partying like crazy in the locker room with everyone. This is what you want to see as a team that's peaking at the right time. The coaching staff and the players are all kind of bought in together. Khalil Mack's kind of talked about all the dinners that he's been purchasing week after week. So I guess the question for you, Ryan, is how confident should the Chargers fans, or how confident are you in this Chargers ability to succeed in the playoffs? Regardless of seed, regardless of who we're playing, but just ability to perform.
I mean, I'm real confident, and I've been confident all year that they would get things right. Now, you said everything. I don't need to repeat it all. I think the offense definitely still needs some tweaks, still needs some improvement. But the important thing with that, as you alluded to, and we even challenged Herbert a few weeks ago, I think leading into the Miami game together, we did a show. And then I know me and my coach Jamal have done a lot is even in games when Herbert's not good, if he can just be great when it matters most, then this team can beat anybody. And we saw that in Miami, we saw him be just the best quarterback in football that game. He was unbelievable that game. But the next week against Tennessee, I mean, I don't know if you guys talked about it much, but he did not play well against Tennessee. Herbert did not play well at all. But when it mattered most on that last drive, the defense gave him a chance. I know they actually technically gave up the touchdown to tie it, but they only gave up 14 points. They gave him the ball back with 40 odd seconds. He got it done. And that was the elite play we're looking for. We've seen Justin Herbert be elite since he's been in this league, for 58 minutes. It was about those last two raising the level when it mattered most. And obviously he's had 12 game-winning drives. I know people have brought that up, but that stat means different if it's 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter or if it's 45 seconds left in the fourth quarter. And so the fact that he's now done that in this stretch, that for one gives me a lot of confidence because he's your best player and he's arguably the best player in football, or at least top 3. And then the defense you alluded to, the fact that they've now got it right and are probably going to be getting Joey Bosa. I know Brandon Staley came out today and said still no updates, but I would assume by playoff time he will be back. That's 2 more weeks. Obviously, Derwin James coming back. But the guys around them are playing so good. As I mentioned, Kyle Van Noy has been unbelievable these last few weeks. You can see he is fired up to be on this team. The buy-in around this system. Khalil Mack, you mentioned it. You mentioned a lot of the other guys. I mean, I think Drew Tranquil right now is the MVP of this defense if we're giving out awards so far this season. So I feel very confident. And the other thing I'll say is I know this last stretch, I know Miami was a good team at least 3 weeks ago. They've lost now, 4 or 5 straight, but they were good when they beat them. And I know that Tennessee and the Colts don't seem like these elite teams, but they're winning games they have to win. And even in tough games, when you look at 3 of their 6 losses, 3 of those 6 losses have come twice to the Chiefs, once to the Niners by a combined 10 points. And those are playoff teams that now that they're getting healthier, now that the defense is improving, now that Herbert's having that crunch time play, I feel confident they can go in and beat those teams because they brought them to the brink in the regular season when they weren't playing their best. And now they are playing their best in playoff time. I'm all for it. And I hope we get that round 1 matchup against Joe Burrow, because I think that'll be so much fun.
Oh, all right, so you're wanting the Bengals. I was actually there in Cincinnati last year for that game where the Chargers won, and boy, was that fun.
Yeah.
You know, it's a weird feeling covering this team, like not being so stressed going into week 17 right now, and not feeling like, you need everyone and their mother to help you to finally get in. What's up with the offense? I think you hear so many people talk about it, and I think that there's a lot of nuance to this, in my opinion, and people are very quick to blame Joe Lombardi, which a lot of it, and I'll be honest, a lot of it is rightly so. However, why? I think some people tend to kind of take the easy way out and are a little lazy and not fully knowledgeable of what exactly is wrong with the offense, and so they'll just kind of make stuff up. And so, in your opinion, you've covered it, you're a smart guy. What is wrong with the offense? If there is something wrong, in your opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few things you can get into. The biggest thing for me is the lack of running game. I think that is, and whether you blame play calling or what, and I want to say this very eloquently because I absolutely love Austin Eckler. This is zero shade. I'm not one of those guys saying like he's cooked, he's done. I'm definitely not saying that. However, if we're just being honest, and especially just at this season, at this junction, it's very hard to say he is a pure elite 3 down in the trenches between the tackles running back. And it's not because he's not good.
Weapon. Yes.
He's an offensive weapon that can absolutely be elite in the passing game, can be a change of pace back. But I don't think, even if we're being honest with Lombardi, maybe even if we're being honest asking Austin Eckler, he would say, yeah, I should get the ball 27 times in between the tackles. And you look at just this season up to this point, only 1 game with 100 yards rushing for Austin Eckler. And that was against Cleveland back in whatever that was, week 4 or 5. No games over 100 other than that game, and very few games over 60 yards. Most of the games we're seeing 39 yards rushing, 45 yards rushing. And so this game, we finally saw 25 plus carries. I pound the table all the time. Like, you have to run the ball 25 times plus. Even if it's not efficient, you're forcing defense to be physical. You're tying them out. You're at least keeping them honest, and you're not just dropping Herbert back 50 plus times. So they are at least balanced this game, but I just don't think they're getting enough. And when defenses know, or they're just able to shut your run game down, it allows them to drop guys back. And so everyone talks about this deep passing game, and it's all dump offs and it's boring. I mean, put on the tape. There's so many routes that are 20 plus yard routes. Guys just aren't open because you have 2 high safeties. I mean, listen, Brandon Staley comes from the Vic Fangio tree, who is an offset of the Tampa 2 system, but it's a cover high 2, which is literally built to slow down big arm quarterbacks. So you don't think other defenses out there are like, oh, Brandon Staley is the coach of this team. Justin Herbert's this big arm quarterback. Let's maybe mimic that defense this week so we don't let him beat us deep, and let's drop 2 guys back, and let's keep 3 quarters high, and let's not give stuff over the top. Like, this is the NFL. Like, defenses are smart. That's why these guys get paid a lot of money. That's why these defensive coordinators become head coaches. And so in order to alleviate that or beat that, and the way the Packers beat that against the Rams in 2021 when Staley was the defensive coordinator, was they gouged the Rams defense. Aaron Donald was hurt that week, gouged them in the run game. And then finally, after 3 quarters of running the football efficiently, Aaron Rodgers was able to pick apart the secondary and do stuff a little deeper. If you can't run the football, and Austin Eckler's averaging 3.2 yards per carry, Joshua Kelly is only getting 4, 5, 6 carries a game, that is where this offense has a deficiency. And I don't know if it's fixable at this time. Maybe you run Austin Eckler, or maybe you run Kelly more. Maybe you get Isaiah Spiller, who you drafted, more involved. I would love to see, this is a different conversation, but I'd love to see them get Zach Charbonnet in the draft next year in the 2nd round. But that to me it's not necessarily a play calling from the passing game standpoint. It's not necessarily a Justin Herbert issue. It's just the lack of run game makes you a little one-dimensional. And maybe it's the personnel, maybe it's other things, but that is, I think, the big issue right now with this offense.
And a couple things just to kind of back up your point. Austin Eckler so far, 183 rushing attempts for 759 yards in the season, 4.1 yards per carry, averaging just 50 yards a game. Joshua Kelly, averaging again 4.1 yards per carry, averaging just 20 yards per game. On the total for the season, the Chargers are averaging 84.9 yards per game on the ground. Not good enough.
Yeah.
especially if you're trying to go deep into the playoffs. It's really hard to win solely on the arm of your quarterback throughout the playoffs. At some point, you're going to have to churn some clock, which you see the Chargers do, which is that's the nuance part. In the fourth quarter, the Chargers had that, whatever it was, 7-minute drive, which they've had a few of them now, where they're able to go 6 of 9 plays are all runs, end up with a touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it takes time, but you're right. And I think they're trying to get this team more balanced. It's not about deep downfield throws or attempts. Ryan said it, but I have a thread of literally hundreds of times where Chargers receivers are running deep downfield and either protection isn't holding up or the routes are too far gone already, or he's already checked it down, or they're just trying to get a first down, so he gives it to the easy receiver for the first down. There's a lot of layers to this. And I think this conversation, comes down to me with it's not about we're not being aggressive. I think it's about we're not being creative in our aggressiveness. And so, defenses seem to know what the Chargers are doing, and rightly so, because the Chargers do a lot of the same stuff. And so the creativity is kind of what I'm feeling I'm lacking. And so, look, Lombardi is on the hot seat. You have a quarterback like this, you have an offense with this many weapons who are now healthy. I know it takes time, but it shouldn't be a struggle to score 20 points, regardless. Yeah. It just shouldn't. And so I think that's what I'm interested to see these next couple weeks, how much they actually showcase in terms of trying to improve on the field. Because if you're Joe Lombardi, if you're Brandon Staley, would you want to show that now before the playoffs? A part of me is screw it. I'm playing vanilla offense the rest of the season until I can get in there, and then I'll let all my cards out. There's no advantage other than winning a game to showcase what you can do in the playoffs. I just do you see it changing anytime soon?
Oh, that's the $1 million question, right? We haven't seen it change to this point, and now they've clinched. So I guess why do change it? Part of it, I think, is them trying to do things when Keenan was out, once Mike went out. It's you're trying to keep things simple for the young guys and not put too much pressure on certain players here and there. You lose some offensive linemen. So you maybe dumb things down. You try to get quick releases for Herbert, but at some point you gotta add, like you said, some more creativity to it. And I would assume we'll see more. When we saw, last year we saw a lot of fun stuff in this offense, and especially against the Raiders when they fell down, and then he kind of just unleashed Herbert and said, "Go do your thing." I think we might see more of that, but I don't know. He's definitely. I'm not a Lombardi hater like many, but I'm definitely at the point now where I'm not saying this guy absolutely deserves to be back. Even if they win a playoff game or two, I think he still deserves a very strong evaluation and decidedly so. We saw Staley move on from his special teams coordinator last year, who was a really good friend of his. So, I don't think it's out of the realm that he says, "Hey, our offense needs to be better." So,
and even,
I don't know. Answer your question. I don't know.
Special teams, and even the special teams last year, it was bad to start the season, but they actually improved very much so in the last month, 6 weeks of season, and even still, he got rid of his friend. So I don't see this narrative of him being so connected to Joe Lombardi and so loyal he's not get rid of him. I just don't see that. I think Brandon Staley is smarter than that, and I think he knows it's more important than just keeping your buddies. So I don't know. It's a little.
Is there a guy weird. That putting you on the spot? Is there a guy you'd want as an OC heading into next year? So let's put it out there. Brandon Staley is going to be the head coach of the Chargers, regardless of what happens now. They clinch the playoffs. Yes. Nothing is changing that. So I want everyone to. You can disagree. I don't think you do, but Brandon Staley will be the head coach. But I definitely don't think there's a guarantee Lombardi will be the OC. There's still a chance, obviously.
I honestly haven't even thought about who I'd like as my offensive coordinator. Have you put a thought into that yet?
Not a lot, not enough. There's some potential out there, but definitely not enough. You could see guys that are OCs now, but aren't actually play callers that are, in good systems. Guys like Liam Cohen with the Rams, who's obviously now been under McVay for a year, was under McVay. And we've seen the success of guys under McVay. So, that's a guy I think to look for, but
maybe Shane Steichen comes back. How funny would that be?
Well, how funny is that? Everyone hated Shane Steichen. He'll be a head coach next year. He's like the hottest name in the head coaching circles. How funny is that?
Sean Payton. Yeah, it's puzzling. I just think a lot of times, Ryan, there's so much black and white spewed by a lot of folks, both in the media as well as fans. And, black and white, like Chargers, they didn't make the playoffs, fire Telesco. Or, Staley should be fired because they didn't make the playoffs. And, over a long period of time, I think that narrative can hold weight. But there's always context and there's always perspective. And seeing what this Chargers team has gone through this season and how many times that they have been like backs against the wall and like needed to have something happen and did. And for them to kind of kick so many narratives this year, whether it's like they can't win close games, whether it's they can't win the tough games, they're not beating playoff teams, they can't, slam the door, they're always going to fail us at some point. They've give them credit. Like they have kind of answered the bell. And I think there were probably a large handful of Chargers fans who saw all of those check boxes and were waiting for that last one of the Chargers victory. And we're like, it would be so Chargers to lose to the Colts on Monday Night Football. Like that is so Chargers in the past. But again, didn't happen. And so I think
they dominated.
Staley,
they dominated. I mean, that's
and Brandon Staley deserves credit for that. And I know, like, it's wild to me that there are still folks who are, they put that asterisk of like, well, yes, this is how it should have been the entire time. Or like, well, if he keeps doing this, then yeah, I'm okay with it. Like through all of that, your Chargers are in the playoffs. Like I don't know many coaches who could have overcome and risen above all the stuff that just happened. And so for the narrative of the organization to flip, for the aggressiveness to flip, for the stigma, for the fan base that is like rolling right now. Did you see the fans in Indy? I was like, holy smokes. The powder blues are coming. If it's not Herbert, which obviously Justin Herbert is probably one of the biggest reasons, if not the biggest reason. The next reason is Brandon Staley, is why this team is where it is. And I don't think it's close.
And just the last point on that, Dan, to put it into some perspective, because I don't think a lot of people are really talking about this, surprisingly, considering it's in the same city. But you look at the Rams this year, and granted, they ended up losing Stafford for the season. And so the Chargers obviously did not lose their quarterback, and obviously Justin Herbert is a better quarterback than Matthew Stafford. I don't think anyone would argue that. But the injuries were similar. Now at this point in the season, that's flipped. The Rams now have more injuries than the Chargers. But when it was like at their peaks, they were both very similar. Rams did lose more on the offensive line, but Chargers lost more in skill positions until obviously then Cup and yada yada. But you could draw a lot of similarities, right? Rams won the Super Bowl last year. A lot of guys came back. Donald, you add Bobby Wagner. Obviously, you lose OBJ, who they only had half the year last year, but you added Allen Robinson. You get a lot of different guys in the offensive line. You get some new defensive guys. It's a 5-win football team, eliminated from the playoffs 2 weeks ago. Sean McVay, I think Sean McVay is a top 3 coach in the NFL. This year doesn't dissuade me in that. Mm-hmm. But you look at all the similarities in terms of injuries, in terms of narratives, in terms of all these different things. They play in the same stadium, yada, yada, yada. Rams are out after being the defending champs, could potentially, if they lose another game, the worst record ever for a defending champion. And the Chargers are in with a lot of similar injuries, the same positions, at left tackle, at right tackle, at center. And so I don't understand the vitriol and the hate for, I mean, I get it for some of the coaching staff, but certainly not the head coach, because not many guys get through that, including the great Sean McVay was not able to get through that. And so that's one thing people listening to put in perspective. Like, this is pretty special what happened this year.
I mean, the Chargers have more wins than Bill Belichick's team right now. Everybody was clamoring for Brian Dable. Chargers have just as many wins, and they've been decimated, literally decimated. So let's pump the brakes. But look, I know this is kind of an emotion-filled episode, but I wanted to kind of just use this one. We'll get into Chargers versus Rams, the Battle of LA, quote unquote, which honestly, At this point, Ryan, it kind of feels like it's just going to be a block party for the Chargers fans at Thunder Alley. Like they're just going to be so happy just to be in the playoffs that we're just going to be everyone's going to be lit by the first quarter.
Yeah.
I think the Chargers do have something to play for. Obviously, they want that 5 seed. I think that helps them. I think going and playing a team like Jacksonville or Tennessee versus playing a team like Buffalo or like Kansas City or like Cincinnati, which I know you're claiming for. There's a difference there. There's a difference in those teams. Chargers already lost to the Jaguars, but again, very different circumstances now, very different teams. And hey, if they get a 5 seed, crazy things could happen. Chargers could play a home playoff game in the second round. Who knows? You never know.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan, any other key takeaways from you from this past week, other than Chargers win? They dominate the team. They dominate a team they're supposed to. They're now in the playoffs. Like, were there any other things that you heard, saw, that you wanted to kind of point at?
Yeah, and last thing I'll just say real quick, you mentioned the 5 seed and why that could be so important. And I know this is the Chargers show, Chargers Unleashed on our network, but Rams last year were a 5 seed and they got a home game in the NFC Championship against the Niners. So that 5 seed can be much better than the 6 seed because you could definitely get things happen in the playoffs and you could get that home game. So, but I think also this is a different. I think the Chargers are almost better on the road. It's as weird as that is. They just seem this year, they play really well on the road. Obviously this win comes on the road. And, it's a great question. I think one thing that stood out to me was how good the defense was playing. And then Derwin makes that hit, gets ejected, goes like concussion protocol. And I think I even tweeted out, I was like, man, I love Derwin. I love his aggression, but you got to know I know it's not a playoff game. They had 2 more weeks to get in, but it's like a playoff type game where winning you're in. Like you hate seeing it when a player of his caliber just, I love it, but get yourself out of the game. Like you can't lose your best player. And you would think sometimes maybe in years past, weeks past, other teams, for instance, when that happens, you'd see the defense start to let up in a way, or at least on that drive, maybe let up. We saw it in, to compare another team, USC. I was at the USC-Utah Pac-12 championship game. And there was a defensive sequence where Raylan Goforth, linebacker, had maybe the biggest hit I'd ever seen on the quarterback, on Cam Rising. And it was like that moment where you're like, okay, the defense is going to snap out of it. A player leaves the game, and then Utah makes a big play after that, goes out and scores and kind of like relinquish that. So it's like one of those where Derwin goes out. It's like, are the Chargers going to give up a little bit? Are they going to do? And it's almost like they clamp down more. Lohi Gilman comes in, obviously looks very comfortable after starting for 2 weeks. He played great still. And the defense just rallied around and said, you know what, next man up. I know it's a cliche saying, but we've seen it with this team. We've for sure now the last 3 weeks seen it with his defense. And that to me is a huge takeaway, because when you lose your best player in the, whatever it was, first or second quarter, I know this is not a good offense in the Colts, but it's still the NFL. You're still on the road, and to see them not even skip a beat, that is exciting as you head, 2 weeks headed into the playoffs for me.
0 for 10 on third down, which is impressive. I think they're literally the last 3 weeks run. I think they're like 18.75% third down conversion allowed in 3 games. It's like 6 for 30. I forget what it was, 6 for 30 something. It's remarkable. I will say, Derwin James being back, for how good the defense has been playing without him, let's just say for 2.75 games now, when he was in there, like, holy smokes, that was like a jolt of electricity for that defense. And that's why he's the heart and soul of this team, is how much he brings to this team. Do you think he's excited to get to the playoffs? Like, I can't imagine what a playoff Derwin James is going to look like now, given what he's gone through personally, along with this team.
Yeah.
So,
because he was he was hurt in 18, right? When they made it in 18, wasn't he hurt, or was he healthy that year?
He was good in 2018. That was his all-pro year, and then he was basically hurt the next 2 years.
That's right.
But you think about like the hunger, right? And I don't want to. I know I'm the optimist. I know I'm the guy that's always positive. But like, you think about like the hunger on some of the for some of these players, like a Khalil Mack. I remember training camp. I was there when they asked him, like, how hungry are you? And he's like, I'll show you. You think about Joey Bosa, Keenan Allen. We've talked about his desire to win a chip. Derwin James, we know. Drew Tranquill has been through a lot. You talk about, it goes down the line. I mean, Justin Herbert, say what you will, like how much crap he's been given. Austin Eckler, like these guys, like they're like that's their life right now, is trying to get this. And so if they have an opportunity, and everybody talked about just like, give me an opportunity to be in the dance. It's an exciting time. It's an exciting time. Los Angeles Chargers are in the playoffs in 2022. That's what everyone sought after at the beginning of the season. They now have a chance to go up as far as the 5 seed in an AFC that is loaded with quarterbacks. And so that's going to be crazy come playoff time. But Ryan, thank you so much for joining us on this one. I know this is a bit of an emotional discussion we had today. Not so much tactical, because at this point it doesn't really matter. Chargers clinched. And now it's going to be about fine-tuning everything between now and the end of Week 18 before we figure out who the Chargers play in the playoffs. Ryan, between now and New Year's Day, Chargers have played the Rams. Anything fun with you and your family happening?
No. Well, thanks for having me on, as always. I know we talk all the time, but it's always fun to actually jump on and talk Bolts. Nothing planned. We're still trying to figure out some New Year's Eve plans. You know how it is when you have a little child. That certainly changes things and makes you want to stay closer to home and just kind of take it easy. So last year we had COVID on New Year's, so we stayed in. So this year we'll see if we go anywhere or just take it easy too. Because obviously, unfortunately, with that, I don't know if you felt the same way, but with the game being flexed out of prime time, it's like, well, now we got to be at the stadium at 9 or 10 a.m. instead of being able to get there. Yeah, instead of being able to get there at 2 p.m. for a 5:30 game. So, but What about you? Any plans?
No plans. I'll be at the game. I do have some family coming in, so we're going to be going to the Chargers-Rams game on Sunday. I'll be bringing a little one and my wife, so look out for Chargers little bear. That will be Avery coming. No, otherwise I'll just be over here excited, happy as a clam that our Chargers are in the playoffs. For Ryan Dyrud, you can find him at Ryan Dyrud LAFB. Myself at Dan W Sports. Jake Hefner will be back soon, I promise. He's now basking in the sunshine wherever he is. But until next time, we'll talk to you next on Chargers Unleashed.